Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Velasquez, for this very wonderful introduction. So, first of all, I would like to thank the EDNU administration, especially the Heritage Committee, for giving this opportunity to for me to be able to share to you for some of the very important highlights about the early years of National University, and as well as the a short or some of the short stories about the founder Don Mariano Fortunato Jhocson, and how he was able to establish what we know as the first non-sectarian. So here, the coverage of my presentation here is of course, the early years again of NU, and first at the time when the founder was born, and up to the time before it was known as National University. It's very important for us, just like what Sir Nilo told us to walk back through time and know more about what happened during those years. So at first, the next slide. So it's very important for us in every educational institution to learn some of the highlights or the context as to how NU was established. Since the founder was born in the late 19th century, there were already a lot of educational highlights that happened during that time. Some of those was that a school of mercantile accounting and modern languages was patterned after the Commercial School of Barcelona was established on July 15, 1840. It offered accounting and mercantile correspondence, mathematics, French, English, and other subjects. This course is considered at that time as one of the most prestigious programs or non-baccalaureate programs, especially at the late 1800s, because once you are able to finish this program, you have the know-how to establish your own business. And it was offered by premier schools in Manila. So when we say premier, it is those are the ones just like of course Ateneo Municipal de Manila, the University of Santo Tomas, Colegio, and Colegio San Juan de Letran. And at that time, it became the basis of the program that our founder took in the Ateneo Municipal, which is Perito Mercantil, which I'll be elaborating in a while. And then in 1863, there was also a royal decree that was issued for a standard primary educational system. Because at that time, take note that, or prior to that time, the primary educational system was only based on the parochial schools. Okay, so in the parochial schools, wherein the friars were the ones providing the necessary instruction. But since then, when we had the Royal Decree of 1863, you had the what we call you have the elementary, the systemat or the standardized um, elementary system, wherein we had this the system wherein all provinces in the Philippines would be able to have a standard system. Okay, so and then 2 years later, in 1865, Queen Isabella II appointed the rector of the University of Santo Tomas as the supervisor of all secondary and higher educational institutions in the Philippines. So here, um, those who wishes to take their their education in Manila would be under the supervision of UST. So UST was considered at that time as equivalent to today's Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Education, wherein they held the entrance and final examinations for all those who wish to enter secondary and higher education and those who have finished their courses. And likewise, they also issue the diplomas of the graduates regardless of where they took their courses. So they're the ones who, so they were everything because remember during those times, we were still, remember, we were still under the principle of the union of church and state principle. So in that case, we have the this practice as to how uh, we'll see the some of the documents related to our founder, wherein how these things transpired. Because at that time, if you're able to take units of education in Manila in the normal school, you'd be able to establish your own schools in the province. That was the norm during that time. That's why so these are just some of those things. Okay, next. Then another thing that we would like to highlight here is the impact of the Chinese immigration. So the Chinese mestizos rose to prominence between 1741 and 1898, primarily as a landholder and a middleman wholesaler for local produce and foreign imports, although there were also mestizos in the professions. So here, the Chinese immigration was very important at that time because the the Chinese were the ones whom the government officials of the Spaniards relied upon to when it comes to business. And culturally speaking, they influenced a lot, especially on the not only the business sector but also somehow in the political sector. No, so the business emerged because the Chinese immigrants were very business oriented. They're very skillful, and so they're the ones that the government, the authorities relied upon too. Okay, so a lot of them were situated in the Parian district. So today it is located in the present day Escolta and in Jones Bridge. So nandyan yung ano yung mga Tianggi noon. No? So they do their commerce at those times. Ano? So and then but before they were able to do that, these Chinese need to be baptized in order to stay in the islands and do business. So that's why, so how do they do that? So first, the Spanish officials and friars stood as godparents. Okay, so here, their surname. So since they have to be baptized as a taking the surnames of their godparents. So, kumbaga yung mga ninong, yun yung kinukuha nilang apelido kasi they have to adopt a Spanish surname at that time. While some others, they retain their father's surname, while others use their mother's maiden surname. So, it also depends on the setup. So, there are some situations wherein they were they were able to do so. Why is that very important? Because remember that in history, the Chinese were the ones who printed the first or opened the first printing press in the Philippines, and by the name of Tomas Pinpin. And also, we have to know why is this very important. Some of you might be wondering, why is this overview very important to our founder because our founder also had Chinese ancestry, and this is how we are going to. I'm going to tell you why because with this work ethic, we could actually compare this to the the atypical work ethic of a Chinese businessman. Okay, so next. So here, what we have here is the lineage or the ancestry of our founder. Okay, so his grandfather, Thomas Jhocson, originally with the name Jhocson from Amoy, China, the province of China. So a lot of them migrated in the 1700s. Based on accounts, Thomas Jhocson migrated to the Philippines and he married Juana Francisca de los Reyes. And of course, they had one of their offsprings, Feliciano Jhocson. So remember that in order to for their name to be Hispanized, the spelling changed. So that's why you have there the Jhocson without an H. And then Feliciano Jhocson married Florentina Velasco, and they had a son named Remigio Jhocson, who later on married Marta Papa. Then, of course, Marta Papa and Remigio had one of their children by the name of Crispulo, who later on married Marcela Alegrado. And of course, because in other sources it was named Cruz or De la Cruz. No? So there are some concerns about it, but nonetheless, Marcela was the mother of our founder, Mariano Fortunato Jhocson. Okay, so but first, let's take a look first at his father, Crispulo. Okay, so as we take a look here, Crispulo Jhocson was born in Manila on June 9, 1850 and became a sculptor and a wood carver of note. Take note at that time also when Crispulo Jhocson became a wood carver. Take note that wood carving was one of the most lucrative professions at that time because since at that period we have also the rise of the middle class and wood carving was considered as a middle class profession, and of course it's also an art. Okay, although you must be creative at your own craft if you are a wood carver at that time. So he was credited with the image of the La Immaculada Concepcion or the Immaculate Conception and with the carving of the pulpit together with a man named Manuel Flores. At that time, if you're commissioned by a church or a cathedral to do their, for example, the altar, the pulpit, the images, it would provide you with it will provide you more than enough. Kumbaga malaking kita yan if you're commissioned to do all the sculptures of a certain church. So that was how Crispulo lived. No, that was his specialization in wood carving. But he also do other things like wooden toys, and wooden other structures. So kumbaga mga commission, no? Kumbaga kasi in wood carving, one important thing that you have to consider is that if you are kumbaga nagandahan yung mga tao, no? If your clients were pleased of what you did, it would be word of mouth that will recommend you to other clients at that time. Even today, no? The word of mouth still works. Okay, so he was awarded an honorable mention by the Ministerio de Ultramar or the Ministry of the Colonies. So the Ministry of the Colonies was the one that handled, or where the Philippines was under control in the latter parts of the Spanish colonial era. Okay, so for his entries in the Exposition General de las Islas Filipinas, or the General Exposition of the Philippine Islands. So when you say exposition, it's like a painting exhibit in Madrid in October of 1887, and by the jurado, or the jury, the International Jury of Prizes. Okay, so since if you are granted an award, at least an honorable mention, if you were not in the first prize, it's not bad because, of course, there were cash prizes at that time wherein he was, kumbaga talagang dun sila humahataw, no, yung mga sculptors, yung mga artists, should I say, no, not only sculptors but also painters. So yun yung ano nila, that is actually their bread and butter. And also, Crispolo also works in the Ateneo Municipal de Manila, no, the same time. Okay, so ayan, so he married Marcela Alegrado on February 9, 1875, and Mariano Fortunato, their third son, or child rather, was born on October 14, 1877 in Santa Cruz, Manila. So no wonder that we're having this webinar at the birth month of none of our very own founder. Okay, so next. Yeah, so since he's a wood carver, so let me just show you this piece of wood carving of Crispolo Jhocson. So this was later on given by Crispolo to his son in appreciation. So it was medyo fast forward tayo, no? In 1903, in appreciation for the establishment of your Colegio Filipino. So it has a lot of symbolisms because I mean, of course, hopefully, if we would be able to have a at least a souvenir. I mean, this is just one of the remaining pictures of that sculpture, of the very own sculptures of Crispolo Jhocson. And later on, it was taken from our logos, the university logos. So first, of course, you have the symbolisms here. You have the Mother Philippines. Then you also have at the background, the background of the Philippine flag. And then you also have there the globe, which symbolizes arts. And then you have books underneath, symbolizing letters. And at the corner, the left corner, you have the caduceus as the symbol of science. Of course, we know the caduceus as the symbol of medicine. So no wonder that later on, NU, the brainchild of our founder, the creation, the establishment of our founder, would be able to evolve in all these things that that has been symbolized by this wood carving of Crispolo Jhocson. Okay, next. Okay, so here, of course, again, Mariano Fortunato Jhocson was born in October 14, 1877. So you have here Atoy, as he was fondly called by even his relatives, even his descendants. He's called as Lolo Atoy. No? So he learned from his father the value of honest work. So as we could see, he was a very studious man because the Jhocsons were, well, they're not that we could say poor, but they are not also rich. So they are only in the middle. We could classify them in the middle class of the society at that time, because of course the founder was able to enter in a prestigious school, but how? So that would we would know. So if you notice in this picture, look how he was, how kumbaga gaano siya kasipag, no? How industrious he is, He was diligent, especially in his studies. So he was already trained at a very young age to be productive. Okay, next. Okay, so here he was able to study at the Ateneo Municipal de Manila in Intramuros despite his father's modest means in exchange for his work for the Jesuits. Because at that time, when he entered, no, so again, kumbaga yung aral ni founder dito, it's kumbaga agreement between the Jesuits na kasi siyempre ma kumbaga nag-aaral yung ano niya nagtatrabaho si Crispolo sa Ateneo. So in return, yung anak niya was able to enter almost for free, if not totally for free. Okay, so and at that time, take note, Ateneo evolved from, kasi they started as a charity school of Manila. So it was Escuela Pia, and then before the return of the Jesuits, because the Jesuits were expelled in 1768, then they returned in 1859, and then it renamed the school, the Escuela Pia, to Ateneo Municipal de Manila. So at that time, as a young student at the Ateneo, Atoy or Mariano already displayed his practical nature and spirit of entrepreneurship. So he was already a business-minded person, and he even sold toys like yo-yo being carved in his father's shop to earn him money to buy books and paper. So he bought school supplies at that time. No? So he was talagang siya, maabilidad, masasabi natin. And later on, he had himself tutored in advanced accounting by a Frenchman named O'Farrell, who became so impressed that the student secured a future position as librarian at the Bazar Filipino, which he held until the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution. So of course, he was he was a burly individual. He had a big physique. 6 feet tall. Okay, so nonetheless, but it doesn't stop him from doing. He was very confident of what he does. Okay, so he later on, eventually, he received this degree of Bachelor in Artes and a certificate as Perito Mercantil. So the term Perito means expert. So business, so it literally means expert in business. So it is equivalent to our today's business administration courses in 1897 with the grade of aprobado or pass. Okay, so here is what I'm talking about a while ago. So we have the third the thing here. Real y Pontificia Universidad de Santo Tomas de Manila, or Royal and Pontifical. Of course, you have the letterhead of UST at that time. So año or year of 1897, and we have here the name Mariano Jhocson E. Cruz. Okay, so we have the profile here. So again, that's the reason why the diploma of our founder is spelled like this. Okay, so again, of course, I was able to look at this or was able to retrieve this at the UST archives this early January before the pandemic. So good enough that we're able to retrieve this from the archives. Okay, next. So here, let's try to take a look a bit at the academic record of the founder of Jhocson in Ateneo. So these are just some of the programs or the subjects that he took. Okay, so actually, if you compare this nowadays, it's somehow comparable to the ABM program in senior high, no? Some probably, or some are considered as major subjects in your business administration courses. And if you notice the grading system during that time, it's not yet numerical. It is by means of words. Okay, so it depends on how you pass the examination. So just like the subjects, so you have here arithmetic and algebra. So I already translated it in English, the equivalent. Okay, so elements of geography, you have French, and then English. Then we also have business math, and yeah, notions of geography and business statistics, okay, political economics, bookkeeping, business correspondence and operations, and lastly, you have mercantile or business law. So if we take a look at his grading, of course, he was neither an honor student, but nor he got a failing grade. So what does this tell us? That even his grades, kumbaga, he was proud enough. It's of course it's he graduated in convincing fashion because with this grades, or if I say the units that Mariano Jhocson took in Perito Mercantil, we could say that he was prepared. He was totally prepared in his eventual quest to establish his institution. Okay, so he had the know-how of business and also of education because he had units in French and English. Okay, knowing that later on, 3 years later after he graduated, no, when upon the arrival of the Americans, it would be English would be the medium of instruction in terms of classroom education. Okay, next. Yan, okay, so yan, medyo na pasensya na ulit. Okay, so let me just have some of his traits. So he was actually an avid horse racer. Okay, so and also a golfer. So he also practiced golf at Wak, okay, as his pastime. Okay, so talagang ano siya kumbaga he had a sort of a work-life balance. No? So he did not forget how to enjoy despite the rigorous times or the rigorous hours of training, of teaching, of managing his own school. Talagang na ano niya yun Masasabi natin he was he was able to balance everything. And one thing also to remember with the founder himself was that ano siya yung makatao, no, when he established the school, kumbaga pantay-pantay yung pagtingin niya sa mga tao, no, the way he looked at the big people kasi he was able to meet the high people in the society. He was able to do that also with the ordinary people. Okay, so wala siyang pinipili. I mean, iba pantay-pantay, hindi siya kumbaga totoo siyang tao. So that's how he was best described by his peers. Okay, next. So during the revolution, he also became a school teacher in Marikina, although he did not join the armed struggle kasi he knew that in order for the country to progress, we need more of education than of revolution. Although some of his other relatives did join the revolution, so one of his cousins, one of the prominent ones was Feliciano Jhocson, who was a pharmacist who owned a drugstore in Escolta, who also became a katipunero and a secretary of welfare. No, take note, he was appointed by his cousin, the one in the picture, was Feliciano Jhocson, no, cousin of Mariano, who changed their names, so to Jhocson. Kasi ang nangyari sa kanila, because of those things, they changed, like, especially in the Filipino-American War, they added an H. Yan, it was the time that they added an H to the Jhocson spelling to avoid being identified, no? Para hindi sila mahuli ng mga authorities. Okay, so another cousin, Fortunato, joined the guerrillas during the Filipino-American War. So you have Feliciano, kasi si Feliciano kasi maagang namatay. Okay, and then si Fortunato, yan. Kaya yung, if you notice, yung dalawa yung kalsada ng NU. So, of course, the one, yung isa MF Jhocson, and then yung isa yung F Jhocson. So, F Jhocson, the one facing yung going to Lacson, adjacent to Lacson and Earnshaw, it is named after Fortunato. Okay, so that is the one that took. Okay, so they were the ones the Jhocsons who were revolutionaries. No, kaya makikita nyo may if you see this one, the Jhocsons have some resemblances to our foremost heroes like Jose Rizal. Okay, so we actually could compare Mariano Jhocson to Rizal later on. And then the other two Jhocsons to the likes of Andres Bonifacio, of Emilio Aguinaldo, because they were the revolutionaries. Okay, so they have their own brand of nationalism, in other words. Okay, next. Yeah, so here, I just, as for Feliciano Jhocson, yan, si Feliciano Jhocson kasi, after, yun nga, medyo nakakalungkot kasi, one of Jhocson's cousin, yan, si Feliciano, was argued to be the designer of the national flag. But, of course, every one of us know that Aguinaldo was the one who asked to have the Philippine flag designed. But in one account of Julio Nakpil, okay, so Julio Nakpil, sino ba siya? Siya yung pangalawang asawa ni Gregorio de Jesus, yung asawa ni Andres Bonifacio. So, according to the account of Julio Nakpil, of course, this is until today, it is being argued upon by historians up until now. But one argument na sinasabi yan, bukod dun sa account ni Julio Nakpil that in this document that we have here, yan, we have the flag here and then the one encircled by red, was the write-up of Julio Nakpil that saying that Feliciano Jhocson was the one that designed the flag. And another argument that that could be put here was that that narrative was that since Feliciano Jhocson graduated from UST, the inspiration of the sun, kasi the symbol was progress and civilization. Okay, so the inspiration here was the chess symbol in St. Thomas Aquinas, which was later on adopted by the South American countries, so like Argentina and Uruguay, because they saw that Aquinas was called the angelic doctor because of his reputation of learning and wisdom. And since the progress of civilization was actually compared, or it meant progress in education. So somehow there are some connections between these symbolisms that we could actually connect with the founder himself. So we could say that the Jhocson family is actually nationalistic, talaga makabayan sila na masasabi. Okay, next. So, of course, let's take a look at the personal life of Mariano. So he first married his first wife, Consuelo Luciano from Cavite in 1901. So they had two children. You have Domingo and Ramon. Okay, so Domingo eventually became the longest president of National University, especially after the war. Okay, so siyempre, so it will be discussed in the next webinar. Okay, then So ito yung kanyang unang ano no. So this was the first marriage. So Consuelo died in 1908. Next. So you have Mariano, the second wife, of course, si Doña Miguela. Doña Miguela Martin, whom he had 8 children. Okay, so iba dito yan, no? Si you have Florencia, you have Recaredo, Remedios, Leticia, Teodoro, Jesus, Mariano, and Pasita. Okay, so si Jesus served also as president of NU, and actually a lot of most of their children of Doña Miguela served in various capacities in NU, especially after the war. Yun yung malalaman natin in a while. Okay, next. Yeah, so okay, Doña Miguela Martin Viuda de Jhocson. Yeah, that's because that's how it was spelled at that time. Kasi medyo maagang na biyuda si Doña Miguela, no, 1928. Can you imagine that? Ano? So she took over as the NU's controller after Mariano's death in 1928, wherein she inculcated her children the values of respect for authority and deep religious faith. Napaka-importante yung lalo na yung pagsisimba. Okay, so kumbaga the Jhocson family was raised as a devout Catholic. And unfortunately, they closed NU during the Japanese occupation and later on opened in 1945. Okay, so she assigned her children to serve in various capacities in the NU administration. So ang ginagawa kasi nila noon is, aside from that, talagang ano sila, they adopt scholars to serve in their household. Yan, so yung mga anak nila, may kanya-kanya rin mga yaya. May mga kanya-kanyang kasambahay. And then after they graduate, palit na naman. No, palit, kumbaga may transition. Diba? Kasi, biruin mo, can you imagine that? Yung board and lodging mo, libre lahat and all. No? All you have to do is to serve the family. And when you graduate, they eventually have, kumbaga magaganda mga buhay. So that's how they were raised, no? The scholars were treated the same as family. So that's very how familial the Jhocsons were. Okay, up until now, I could say that because when we did the interviews with the Jhocson relatives, yun ang masasabi nila sa kanilang lola. No, they were trained, talagang tinuruan sila ng maayos sa pagpapalakad ng school, and at the same time, how to treat people right. Kaya yung mga employees noon, tumatagal sa institution regardless of what situation NU had. Okay, so that's their legacy. That's how their legacy was about. Okay, next. Ayan, so just want to highlight, although marami silang anak, pero I just highlighted one of their children, si Recaredo Danding Jhocson, because Recaredo Jhocson joined as a guerrilla during the Japanese occupation. So just like any other guerrilla that was captured, he was incarcerated and tortured at Fort Santiago. But later on, he served as University Registrar of NU. This is just to prove to everyone how nationalistic, paano lumalaban or paano naging makabayan ang lahi ng mga Jhocson. And I should say, talagang masasabi natin na they did what is best for the country, no, at all costs. Yan. So ilang generations 'yun ng mga Jhocson na who had nationalistic fervor. Okay, next. Yeah, so this is the family portrait of of the Jhocson. Sayang nga lang, hindi na nila inabot yung kanilang tatay. So Doña Miguela sa center. So I think Domingo is at the at the left of Doña Miguela. So you have Domingo, and then the one at yung sa gilid is Pasita. Yeah, so this is or Pasita is actually the mother of of Sir Nilo. Yeah, so they married Ocampo, Benigno Ocampo, and so they're the ones who later on had served National University. Okay, their eldest son, Teodoro Sir Teddy, was the former president. Then you also have Jesus at the middle, at the center middle, who became the president, eventual president of NU. So Domingo and Jesus magkasunod yan. Next. So another picture. So ito naman yung buong angkan ng mga Jhocson. Okay, so if you look at the children and their grandchildren, so makikita natin gaano kalaki yung kanilang pamilya. So can you just imagine, bawat anak ni founder may yun nga yung mga pinapaaral nila, no? May kanya-kanya silang pinapaaral. So pag nakita natin to, ilan yung kanila inaalagaan, and they lived a happy family at that time. So this picture, I think, was taken from the old main building. You have the portrait of the founder on top. No? Kaya masasabi natin talagang napakalaki at talagang napakasaya ng kanilang pamilya. Yun ang if we describe them. Okay, next. Yeah, so he succumbed to illness. So he died on March 17, 1928. So he was actually at the peak of his career. No, so it was the only time when NU did not have its graduation rites. No, so yun lang nakakalungkot doon kasi when he started NU, siyempre nag-umpisa siya from the bottom, but he started from scratch actually. Okay? And on his last days, his family, Mariano, and joined by his wife Miguela and eldest son Domingo, to continue the task that he dedicated his life, which is to educate young men and women of his country. Yan. Kaya makikita natin yung buhay ni founder, even though he lived quite short, but he contributed a lot. Kaya nga sabi ng mga kaibigan niya, next. Yan. So one of his closest friends in the academy, si Rafael Palma, who was the president of UP. Yan, kaya nga Palma Hall yung tawag doon, si Rafael Palma, in honor of Rafael Palma. He described Don Mariano as an untiring worker, sabi dito, no? So this is the speech of or the eulogy of Rafael Palma, kasi the medium at that time was Spanish. Untiring worker who always had plans for the expansion of NU. As a bold but prudent man whose moves were calculated and goals well defined, a man with a firm and energetic disposition and a generous and appealing personality. He chose the field of education because that was where he could serve the greatest number and spread the greatest good, convinced that education was the means for a people to realize their aspirations. And can you imagine that from a friend who was a university president at that time? Okay, so kasi talagang sabi nga natin, the presidents, the owners of the school have strong linkages, especially at the early times. At hindi natin maitatanggi yung talagang dedikasyon ni Mariano. Okay, so next. Okay, so now let's take a look at the establishment of National University. So in this picture, this is the the old main building of NU. So we have here the main building, and then we have beside it is the old elementary building, and then across, I think we're familiar here, this was the science building, which was known to many as the old dentistry building, and the soon to be, I think, the administrative building will be transferred there, and that's why we call it the heritage building. So hopefully, actually, it's the oldest existing building of NU, no, from 1928. Actually, you could already declare it as a heritage building, no. So it stood, of course, the Second World War up until the present, no. So that's how long this university is, no, if you could imagine. Okay, next. Yeah, so when NU was established, the Colegio Filipino was established in 1900. We were still in a war with the Americans, and of course, we know in history, Emilio Aguinaldo transferred this government from one place to another. While while the revolution is ongoing, the Ilustrados were also part of the Malolos Congress, opt for American statehood. And the Partido Federal would be formed before the war is over. Okay, so kaya masasabi nga natin, hati rin yung mga Pilipino noon kasi yung iba, mas pabor na masakop na lang tayo ng Amerikano kasi mas sa kanilang palagay, mas maayos. Okay? And the war against the Americans would not end until the surrender of General Miguel Malvar in 1902 in Lipa, Batangas, but within Manila. Okay, so within kasi during that time, Manila was already under the control of the Americans. So as for as for Mariano, he find it timing that it is a high time for him to establish a school. No, instead of joining the war, just like what his relatives did, no? Yun nga, mamamatay ka lang, no? Yun yung palagay, yun yung posibleng palagay ni Mariano na mas maigi. Turuan na lang yung mga tao na ito na mahirap nang banggain yung bagong mananakop. So let's just educate the youth, especially in the how in the way that it should be under the new colonizer, especially that you already have a civilian government, no? Yan. Okay, next. So now let's take a look briefly at the colonial policies of the Americans, because with Act 74, yan, passed on January 21, 1901. So ito yung so if we take a look at that time, it was led by Dr. David Barrows. So it was the one that provided for the partitioning of the islands into 10 school divisions. So first, the opening of primary schools in every municipality. No, so an optional religious instruction, because that time we were already shifting from the union of church and state to the separation of church and state principle. No, and the use of English as medium of instruction. So transition, kumbaga transitionary yung ginawang policy ng mga Amerikano. So in the case of Mariano, pinapattern niya, nilelabel niya dun sa kung ano yung gusto ng America at that time, no? So what was sharp distinction between the primary and intermediate courses. Okay, so may mga examinations, no? So you have uniform examination and promotions above also the 3rd grade. The next is elementary education, was this time consisted of 7 grades. Okay, so the coursework for each level put heavy emphasis on the English grammar, writing, reading, and arithmetic. So all other subjects like drawing, music, geography, hygiene, and sanitation, history, biology was also added. No? So while the students move up, so they expanded the course offerings, because that was how they teach it also in America. So siyempre ipapattern nila dito sa Philippines. Okay, next. Yeah, and then 1910, so in this picture you have the typical classroom system. So in 1910, the new curricular programs were introduced at the intermediate level. Kasi ito yung time na Kaya masasabi natin yung senior high system natin, hindi na po siya bago. Kasi during the time of the Americans, we already have almost the same practice. No? That there were special programs designed so that students who did not desire to pursue higher education could be economically productive at once. No? So those are what we call vocational courses. Yan, kasi di ba meron po tayong tech box strand ngayon sa K-12. So meron na rin noon, kahit nung hindi pa K-12 ang tawag. Okay, so ayan, so just take a look at the subjects, no? So teaching, farming, trade. Actually, during that time, let me tell you also that kung hindi ka, if you were able to finish at least second year in high school, you would be able to teach in the primary schools. Pwede ka na maging teacher, at least if you finish second year high school. No? So, kasi talagang their emphasis at that time was the English language. So, when it was established, sabi dito, the education officials saw the urgent need for a state-run university. Okay, so para, yan, so that the promising graduates would have place to continue their secular education. That's why, yan, yung UP, that's why it was established in 1908, 1908, and then there were also the other secular schools. So, kumbaga, unti-unting dumadami ang competition ng NU. So, they really have to innovate at some sort. Okay, next. Yan, so punta na po tayo sa establishment ng NU. So, yan, Colegio Filipino. Okay, so 1900. So, if we take a look at 1900, August 1, we are very familiar with that, Nationalians, ano? So, he was 23 years old when Don Mariano, took this, sabi nila, proverbial step of establishing, no, through his house, yung bahay nila. So actually it was a rented house or an accessoria, accessoria means an apartment, no, at Calle 7 at Palma Street in Quiapo. So it was where he first taught, no. So take note, he was the teacher, he was the janitor, the cashier, the controller, all at once. So he was an all-around man when he established his Colegio Filipino. Bakit pangalan Colegio Filipino? So, because it was the first big institution established by a Filipino. Kasi matatandaan natin, during the time of the Spaniards, most of the institutions, especially in Manila, the universities, the colleges, were founded, owned by the religious orders, like the Jesuits, the Dominicans, and the Agustinians. No? And then, so tingnan nyo parang siya nag-umpisa, no? Only one classroom and office, and then every year, pag dumadami enrollment, they added one classroom at a time. No? So, yun nga, dahil Filipino ang nagtatag, kaya tinawag na Colegio Filipino. So, at that time, it was the time that Colegio was known to be a college. Kasi dati, ang Colegio noon, educational institution, but it's more of a dormitory for college, for educational instruction. But this time, college, yan, the word Colegio was situated to be the basis of our college today for school. Okay, so 1901, the school rented 4 rooms at Calle Noria, or known as P. Paterno now, in Quiapo. So yung nasa taas, yun yung sa Calle Palma, and then yung nasa baba in your picture is Calle Noria. So siyempre kailangan mong lumipat at mag-expand. So gradual yung pag-expand ni Mariano. Next. Yeah, so at the beginning of 1902, it moved to 151 Calle Arlegui in Quiapo. Alam natin ito, malapit sa Malacanang, ano? So it had 5 classrooms and 2 additional rooms. So if we take a look at this one, you have the so they rented the additional rooms. And later on, kasi tumaas yung renta, so they moved to Gastambide in Sampaloc. where it was renamed in 1906. Okay, so dito nag-offer na sila, they offer 9 classrooms and more spaces where they offered primary, intermediate, and secondary basic education. Because at the first one, yung mga una, primary pa lang kasi in-offer nila, and then later on, they offered the intermediate and secondary levels. And the teachers were actually students preparing for higher education at UST. So in exchange, at their services, they were given free board and lodging. No? So hindi, kumbaga more on allowance, hindi talaga sweldo. Kasi can you imagine that yung mga teachers kasi at that time yun nga hindi pa ganun kahigpit sa ang mga officials, sa mga authorities at that time. So that's the reason why the setup was like that. Okay, next. Then it later on evolved into course Colegio Mercantil from 1904 to 1915, no? So kasi it evolved to Colegio Mercantil kasi noon ang not really nakalaban, but the competition of NU, of Colegio Mercantil during that time was the public school system of 1902, which has almost the same curriculum because of the public school system, siyempre mas libre yun, mas maraming papasok doon. So, to respond to that particular challenge, Don Mariano offered or added commerce. Siyempre, he had units in mercantil, remember? So, he added commerce, bookkeeping, and accounting, and ceramics, yan, in its curriculum. And at that time, take note that they decided to relocate again. Okay, so these relocations to improve the instruction and the well-being of the students. Yan, kaya makikita nyo, no, as year goes by, talagang ang tiyaga ni founder maghanap ng lugar. Kasi noon, unti pa lang kasi ang tao din noon, ang mga naninirahan. So, medyo madali pa maghanap ng lugar noon. Okay, so, and then 8 years later, a third floor was added, housing 18 more classrooms to accommodate more students up until 1921. No? So, kumbaga unti-unti, hindi niya binibigla yung pagdadagdag. No? Kasi makikita niya, napapakiramdaman nila how important or yung the need of adding students or of classrooms because of the gradual increase of student enrollment. Okay, so talagang and if we hopefully we could hopefully in the next webinars it will be shown that most of the students at that time enrolling in NU came from the provinces kasi ito yung mga tao noon, yung mga hindi kaya, yung mga siyempre may hirap sila at ang gusto talaga nila is makapag-aral, makatungtong sa Maynila kasi for a person coming from the province, one of the best investments that they could have is an education in Manila na madadala nila sa kanilang probinsya, and later on it would able to kumbaga maahon sila from poverty. That's the important thing. That's the principle that most of these students follow. No? Next. Yeah, so again, so it stayed there until 1925 when the founder bought a parcel of land on Calle Lipa. So yung Calle Lipa, yan yung MF Jhocson. Okay, so by 1913, it was officially allowed to confer high school diplomas to its graduates. So una from elementary, sabi nga natin, it's gradual. And at first, it had bilingual instruction, English and Spanish. And then 2 years after, it adopted English as its primary medium of instruction. Kasi nga, nung una, ang hirap na biglang English kagad. Kasi ang language talaga noon is either Spanish or in Tagalog. So, what happened was, ginawa Spanish, no? So, from traditional to transitional to transformational instruction. No? So, and then, yeah, June 1915, in cooperation with Ricardo Lacson, the Lacson brothers, they opened the College of Law, accredited on February 7, 1916, which was the Philippine Law School. Kasi at that time, Ricardo Lacson entered NU as as an official. So he owned Philippine Law School. So nagkaroon sila ng agreement ni founder na magkaroon tayo ng law school. Kasi at that time, marami ng competitions nun sa law eh. Siyempre, nandiyan ang UST, ang UP. So, siyempre, yung sa Colegio Mercantil, no? So, it was the next addition. Next. Yeah, so here are the pictures of the students at that time at Colegio Mercantil when they celebrated its 11th founding anniversary. Okay. Next. Yeah, so here, National Academy, 1919 to 1920. Actually, medyo nagkaroon pasensya ng typo. It should be 1916, ano? So, 1916, National Academy. So, kasi it offered this time the College of Liberal Arts. So, they gradually offered baccalaureate courses. So accredited on February 15, 1918. So they started offering courses, so baccalaureate courses and associate courses or degree programs, no? So preparatory law. So pag natapos na yung preparatory law ng first and second year, you can already take up law school. Yan, the same with medicine, first and second year, parang pre-med at pre-law. No? So leading to the title of Associate in Arts. And we also have the Liberal Arts course, yan, yung talagang degree of Bachelor of Arts. Okay, so kasi noon konti pa lang eh. Unlike today na yung mga baccalaureate degrees is already 4 years. So noon, 2 years pa lang noon. Then later on, it was reincorporated on January 17, National Academy in 1921. Which changed its name to National University. Yeah, so that was a picture of the National Academy at that time. So nasa ano na siya? Nasa Kalye Lipa. Okay, next. Yeah, so during the time in National Academy, they already have different clubs and fraternities. So first yan, kasi you have the day department and the high department. So like in elementary, no, yung yan, Mabini Debating Club, ano? Can you imagine that? You have the orchestra, the women's league, because at that time the feminist movement was very strong. Okay, the National Academy Athletics Association. So even before you have the UAAP, they already have their own athletic club. Then the high department, I think this is with high school. You have the Mercantile Debating Club, or you have yung Dramatics Club. Okay, and can you imagine you have a Junior Philippine Senate at that time because for those who want to practice, who want to enter law, no, who want to practice lawmaking, they already have all these practices. So extracurricular activities was already evident at that time. No? So next, the student publication. So we have the Academy. So the Academy Herald, or simply the Herald, was published monthly except April and May. So in the Herald, it published all the important news and events all around National Academy. And when it evolved to NU by 1921, it evolved as the National. So it became the official school paper of NU at that time. So can you imagine how strong it was? Ano? The ideas of the students were published in the Herald at that time. Hopefully we could have a copy of that. No? Yan. Next. And then campus operation. Of course, during that time, since they offered scholarship to students, so every offices at that time, it became a university policy to have a student assistant in every office. No, so up until today, no, so they provided opportunities for the poor and capable students to go to college. And of course, meron conditions yan. So since their allowance, can you imagine, ano, 30 to 60 pesos a month, depending on the office that they are serving. Kasi kumbaga, even before AMA and STI implemented the enrollment to employment system, we are already implementing it at that time. Imagine that, ano? So scholarships are given to deserving students. So you have the criteria, 15 units, average not less than 2, and no grade lower than C. So that was the equivalent grade at that time. Okay, so you have the yung A, minus, then B plus. So you have the numeric equivalent of 1 as the highest. Okay, so mostly in the report cards at that time, siyempre handwritten po, yun yung mga madalas makita. Okay, so most of those things are being seen in the card, in the grade, in the scholastic records of the students. Okay, so next. Yeah, so to sum up, kasi my coverage was just in the pre-university years of NU. So from 1900 to 1921, these were the milestones that NU had. First, it was the first non-sectarian university in the Philippines from August 1, established in August 1, 1900, and it was the first non-sectarian private school to hire American teachers. Because the law school dean was an American, and also the first private university to use English as the medium of instruction. So later on, other universities followed suit at the curriculum also of NU. So even though, so at 120 years, we set milestones, we set standards that every nationalian should be very proud of, especially at the legacy of our founder. And with that, we have so actually this ends my presentation. So for the references next. Yeah, so here are the references of the presentation. So there are actually other ones, but these are the most important things or that gave impact to NU's history, especially in the context of the legacy of Mariano Jhocson. So with that, I hope everyone is able to learn a lot from NU's undying and enduring legacy and heritage. Thank you very much.